Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable, or on the Facebook event page for episode 221, Unsung Heroes of American Freemasonry, or on the YouTube live chat for you handsome few that are watching us live, running alongside this video. So, as for me, you know who I am. I am wearing an awesome shirt. Back to the lodge. My name is John Ruart, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in good old Fairfax, Virginia. Next up, we have Robert Johnson for his introduction.
Hello, RJ, Robert Johnson, Waukegan Lodge number 78, past master, current sitting secretary. If you like Big Trouble in Little China, I was going to say, and a whole lot more, and maybe you'll get that. But anyway, back to you, John.
Also wearing an awesome shirt.
That's true. Look at it's so amazing.
It's covered up by everybody else's avatars.
Well,
Looking
good anyway.
Mike the intern, how are you tonight?
Good. It's Mike Hambrick here from Village Lodge number 274 in Burton, Ohio, and Triandria Lodge number 780 in Rock Creek, Ohio, where I am the junior steward and lodge education officer. Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. Next up, Juan Sepulveda.
Buenas noches. Juan Sepulveda here from Kissimmee, Florida. Member of Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast episode number 42 live now. Buenas noches.
Cheers. Is it warm down there tonight?
No, it's okay. It's
Okay.
like 70, no, 80, yeah, 75 right now.
DC area is getting slammed. Speaking of DC, Jason Richards.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Jason Richards here, past master, Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C., also wearing an awesome shirt, but not made probably by the same person who made John's shirt.
Probably.
And damn happy to be here.
All right. Well, welcome. Let's see. First up in Masonic news, we have an article straight out of, guess where? Chris Hodap's blog, which is an article about the Job's daughters have finally settled a trademark dispute. There's a little bit of a backstory here, but I'll let Jason give us a quick summary of what's been going on with these Job's daughters and their trademark.
So this is kind of a trademark battle that's been waging for the better part of a year and a half now. They're essentially Job's Daughters is one of the few, I think, Masonic-related organizations that very closely guards their trademarks and their intellectual property. So I have heard actually from Bethel members that they're very, very restrictive in what kinds of licensed Job's Daughters graphics they can use or apparel they can print out, etc. with the Job's Daughters intellectual property logos and whatnot. So in this case, there was a young lady who was essentially doing some lighting or something with the Job's Daughters logo on it, and doing that for the girls, apparently at no extra cost. So it wasn't like this person was profiting from it per se. However, Job's Daughters International as a group didn't appreciate that, and they actually sued this woman. So it's been a protracted legal battle, I think, since Chris Hodap mentioned it in like February of last year. They've finally come to apparently a settlement out of court, and it looks like, I guess, Heidi Yost is the woman who had the lawsuit filed against her, and they've come to an agreement that allows her to create soft goods utilizing Job's daughter's trademarks for the foreseeable future. But that, I mean, it seems like
That would be like selling T-shirts and stuff like that. I
yeah, selling T-shirts and clothing and stuff like that. But
We don't
No,
need any more T-shirts or phone cases. We need real Masonic art.
Yes, that is true.
well, just it seems to me like a colossal waste of resources, like time and energy, 18 months worth of like court cases and legal disputes, just to stop someone from selling T-shirts.
Costs a lot of money for your organization to protect that.
Yeah, and to be honest, I've kind of followed this since Chris mentioned it back early last year. Of course, I was really big into helping out the Job's Daughters last year because they're one of the youth groups that supports Acacia Lodge, and one of the things that I made sure to do was I gave the lodge donations and lodge money directly to the individual Bethel, because I didn't want any of that money getting wrapped up in this.
Pass through.
Yeah. So that's why I'm a big proponent. This is just one example why I'm a very big proponent in giving to the lowest common denominator. So if you have a specific chapter or a specific Bethel or some lowest, local organization, I think you'll see money stretching further there as opposed to giving it to a national type of organization. But that's just kind of a code I live by personally.
Also, if you're interested in trademarks and intellectual property, remember we did do an episode all the way back in July of 2015. Wow, seems like yesterday. Episode 77 on intellectual property, where we talked about copyrighted symbolism, such as the square and compasses, where it's copyrighted, where it's not. How do you do it? How do you respect people's work, etc.? So go back and check that out. Episode 77, intellectual property. Maybe if they listened to that 3 years ago, they wouldn't be where they are today.
Nobody in Masonic leadership listens to our show.
Thank goodness.
What's funny about that is we have a lot of folks out there, and I really appreciate it because I think a lot of the things that we talk about are generally the feelings of most of the people listening. Maybe every once in a while we come out and somebody's like, I really don't agree with you guys. But
Episode 42.
Yeah, I think we're a good litmus test. I guess that's probably the wrong word to use, but a good consensus of the general feeling. And what's great is every once in a while, something that like maybe an episode or something gets shared with somebody at a Grand Lodge level or something, because one of our listeners, what are you guys out there, shares it with them. And I think that's amazing. But at the same time, I wonder, is it falling on deaf ears, or I wonder just how it works with that, I don't know.
See, the only thing that keeps me going based off of that is that hopefully these videos will still be on years after we pass on, right? So someone can go back, back in 2015, those guys were right. We were on to something.
Do you think that in the future will be like hologram things like Princess Leia in Star Wars? Don't sue me, Lucas. I mean, Disney.
Do you think more like Max Headroom?
Oh, how cool would that be? They'd have to run some weird filter.
Holographic masonry. Interesting. Anything else, Jason, you want to cover on that?
No, I'm personally glad that this is kind of over so that the actual kids in the youth group can get back to building each other up and doing great things for their organization. It seems like the adults have stopped screwing it up for at least momentarily.
That's an interesting outlook. I want to be a better version of myself, but I have to wait for the adults to stop fighting. Moving along,
Happens more often than you would anticipate.
I'm sure. Let's get into tonight's topic, which is the unsung heroes of American Freemasonry. Given that today, as we record this, is July 3rd, 2018, the day before Independence Day here in the States, and we wanted to go back and take a look at some of the American Freemasons that may or may not have a large impact into the founding and growth of the United States of America. So we kind of left it wide open. We let each of the hosts pick one at random. So it may not necessarily be Revolutionary War, Civil War, it could be modern day. And so we're going to get basically a grab bag or potpourri of American Freemasons. And so
what we didn't want to do tonight was talk about George freaking Washington.
Hey, did you know he was a Mason?
No.
I hate that every time.
Oh,
And if you're in Kentucky, did you realize that Thomas Jefferson was a Mason?
But wait, no. What? Not true.
Thomas Jefferson was not a Mason.
well, I mean, Creason wrote a post about that. You can read all about it.
That's true.
Evidence, what's it? The logical fallacy of burden of proof.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Go look it up, kids.
Abe Lincoln
that
was
means
also.
Abe Lincoln was possibly a, anyway.
So none of those, which we'll be covering tonight. Let's see. Hey, Mike the intern, why don't you lead the way and take us over to your favorite Freemason?
So I had a hard time choosing for my unsung hero tonight because my first choice, which he's not doing, but originally had been taken by Jason, which was Harry Houdini. So my list obviously went to guys like Davy Crockett, Samuel Langhorne Clemens, or Mark Twain, Audie Murphy, Bob Evans, Dave Thomas, W.C. Fields, Ty Cobb, William Bud Abbott, and Oliver Hardy. Just a handful of ones that, guys that I have actually watched their stuff or, read about, things like that. But as I was going through the list that's available out there, I came across the name of one of my childhood heroes. Mind you, his days of heroism happened quite a bit before I was born. Not terribly, but enough. And I only became aware of him when I was looking for someone from Cleveland, sort of, that I wanted to be like. You see, when I was 10, I wanted to be a pitcher so bad I could taste it. And that's when I found out about one of the greatest pitchers in Cleveland Indian history, Bob Feller. Bob Feller was born in Van Meter, Iowa in 1918. We don't have the date, but he was a member of Grove Lodge number 824 in Downers Grove, Illinois. He started playing baseball for the Cleveland Indians at the age of 17. He debuted against the Washington Senators and a month later against the St. Louis Browns. And he was a star right from the start. But and that was in 1936. In 1941, right after the attack on Pearl Harbor, he left the Indians to join the United States Navy, where he served as a chief petty officer on the USS Alabama during World War II. That interrupted his baseball career for approximately 5 years. He returned to Cleveland in 1945. Now, the one thing he does say about his interruption and going to the Navy, he felt that the heroes from that war did not come home. And he also feels that had he continued playing baseball those years, he would have ended up with over 100 more wins, taking him over 400 total wins. But, that's just speculation. He returned to Cleveland Indians in 1945, continued to play for them until 1956. Now, he's the only pitcher in history so far to have pitched a no-hitter on opening day. He was considered the greatest pitcher of his day. Ted Williams said that. And he was also the fastest pitcher of his day. They ran he was considered such a fast pitcher, they decided to run a exhibition test to see how fast he was. He threw a pitch against a Harley-Davidson motorcycle that, as the motorcycle passed him, it was going 86 miles an hour. His ball hit the wall before the motorcycle got passed the wall, and the motorcycle was going 98 when it passed the wall. They basically took, because it's been videotaped or played over and over. They said that it is based on modern speeds testing. It was about 104 miles per hour. He was able to play in only one of the two World Series that the Indians were in during his time with them. Neither one of those years did they win. But during his time in the American League Baseball, he went up against the commissioner of baseball because he was constantly trying to go. He would go to Cuba and Mexico and play in the winter leagues there, and that was not frowned upon. It was actually considered against the rules of American baseball to do so. And he went up against the commissioner, claiming that this is not right for American citizen ball players to be not allowed to go and play in the Cuban and Mexican winter leagues, as we allowed and even encouraged players from those countries to come here and play during our summer league. He spent quite a bit of time trying to fight that. He became a member of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Anyway, that's about as good as I've got for him. I really did, when I was young, I know I had a lot more in my head about him, because I really wanted to be a baseball player back then and wanted to be a pitcher. And well, when I grew up, I became a lot less of a jock and more of a nerd. So anyway, he's one of mine.
Cool. Very, very cool. That's thank you for sharing that. Nice little bit of history, throwing us a couple of cool little anecdotes. Thank you, Mike. Let's pick V wants Sepulveda next to tell us his unsung hero of American Freemason.
All right. Well, I looked through the list and I was trying my best to find something related to the Revolutionary War or something like that. But I came with a second best option, especially one of the names that popped out at me from the list we were looking at was John Pemberton. I'll tell you some things about John Pemberton. That's not the one you got, right? Oh,
no, I thought you were going to say John Ruark, but
almost.
So who's John Pemberton?
I'll tell you a little bit about John Pemberton. He was born on July 8th, 1831 in Knoxville, Georgia. And he grew up to join the military. And of course, in Georgia, he fought for the Confederacy. He in his military career, he became a lieutenant colonel of the Confederate Army. And in one of the fierce battles that happened in that area, one of them called the Battle of Columbus, Georgia, and we have some good brothers in Columbus, Georgia. I'll tell you a little bit more about them in a little bit. He received a saber wound on his chest, so severe that, of course, he was out of the battle for a while. But this wound led to a morphine addiction. And for brothers that don't know, morphine addiction was a very common thing during the Civil War for soldiers that were wounded. It was one of the very few medical alternatives that wasn't barbaric to a degree, and that at least could alleviate some of the suffering that they had. He was a pharmacist by profession. So he, recognizing that he had developed this morphine addiction, he wanted to try to use some of the elixirs, some of the ingredients that he was familiar with to create some sort of tonic or elixir that could help him fight off this addiction. He studied medicine in the and pharmacy at the Reformed Medical College of Georgia in Macon. And in 1850, at the age of 19, pay attention, slackers, he was licensed to practice what was referred as Thomsonian or botanic principles, which basically gives the man the license to actually utilize these natural ingredients of sort and come up with some botanical remedies. At the time, this was a practice that was kind of looked at funny, like what is that thing that some people frown upon, saying that it's like
Like homeopathic.
exactly. That's what came to mind. It had that kind of rap. Anyway, he practiced medicine and surgery before the war in Rome, and in the effort, like I said, to cure himself from the opium addiction, he came up with a formulation that ended up being his most important formulation. And they knew it at the time, or he called it at the time, French wine coca. The reason it's called coca is because part of the ingredients, as he described it, this elixir was composed of an extract from the leaf of the Peruvian coca, the purest wine, and the cola nut. This, he described it as the most excellent of all tonics, assisting in digestion, imparting energy to the organs of respiration, and strengthening the muscular and nervous system. This was an early version of what today we know as Coca-Cola. But Dr. John Pemberton, is the inventor of Coca-Cola. And this did contain extract from the coca leaf. So yes, it was a, what would be considered today an illegal substance.
What a delicious one.
A delectable one. Now,
I need a Coke.
remember, he is promoting it at the time as a medicinal remedy for opiate addiction, or morphine addiction. But in 1886, the city of Atlanta enacted a legislation that brought about prohibition. So it didn't matter that he was selling it as a medicine through his license, pretty much a regulated substance. He now was forced to start looking at what he could do in order to make this what some people termed as a temperance beverage. So something that would be acceptable even after the prohibition. So he ended up replacing the wine, which was what contributed some of the sweetness to the tonic. He replaced that with sugar syrup, with some sugar mix. It's private. I know exactly what it's made of, but I can't tell you. And
Was it made of cocaine?
sí, señor. Pure snow. Let me tell you, it's made of the purest snow you could ever come across. So,
do you like to ski?
Here, whenever this happened, shortly after 1886, this is what then he also introduced carbonated water into it. So, two of the main ingredients that we know Coca-Cola for is being like the sugar syrup or corn syrup, whatever it's used today as a sweetener, and the carbonation. So this is when it took a turn and became something more recognizable to us today. Got a lot of stuff about this. Let me try to go. How are we doing on time? I want to go
as long as you need to, bro.
All right. I found this.
Just go.
Just do it, man. So this new temperance drink now, of course, is gaining. While you have people that have to go either to the speakeasies or find a covert way of satisfying their palate, this becomes a new exciting thing that people could drink anywhere. So it starts gaining popularity. His friend Frank Mason Robinson suggested the catchy name. So in May 8th of 1886, the first Coca-Cola was sold at Jacob's Pharmacy in Atlanta, Georgia. And they described it as delicious, exhilarating, refreshing, and invigorating. And it was a valuable tonic and nerve stimulant properties of the coca plant or cola nut. I don't think it had that during that period, but eventually it gained it again. It's a long story. But even though this was known as a temperate drink, unfortunately, it wasn't such a temperate brother. He, of course, he had this bout with morphine addiction is something that led him to a lot of financial trouble, a lot of dependency on the substances, which, even though he was a very astute businessman, he was under the influence of this, which eventually pretty much took his life. So in a desperate move, he began selling rights of his formula and his business, basically, to some of the partners that he originally had. He thought that eventually this business was viable and that it could be very, very popular. So he wanted to leave some of that to his child. I say his child, but he was a grown up at the time. But unfortunately, he ended up being not so temperate himself, and he ended up selling everything. All the stakes of the Pemberton family were sold to some of the other partners. So when John Pemberton died at the age of 57 in 1888, he owned nothing of the company. So he pretty much only left a legacy that others enjoy, because his family pretty much didn't. His body was returned to Columbus, Georgia, where he was buried at Linwood Cemetery. And if you brothers listen to episode 25 of The Winding Stairs, called No Stone Unturned, I visited Columbus, Georgia, and this is when I found out about Brother John Pemberton. I went to his gravesite, and that's when I saw that his tombstone is engraved with the Confederate flag and the Masonic square and compasses. And you can see pictures of it on The Winding Stairs /002. I mean 025, I think it is. But it was very exciting to see that. I went to his home. I went to a museum, and I saw a lot of this. It's sad that he ended up in ruins and didn't see the success of what he invented. But at least he left the legacy, and he left a lot of lessons in his story for us to observe.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you for that background of a good Georgia brother. Let's see. I'll go next. Tonight, I want to cover the unsung hero of the American Revolutionary Freemasonry.
Aaron Burr.
No. A gentleman by the name of
Benedict Arnold.
No, definitely not. Oh, geez. We were just talking about him in the green room. Great guy. The gentleman I want to talk to is about brother Robert Newman. So Robert Newman was born on March 20th, 1752 in Boston. He had an interesting family tree, because his great-grandfather, Reverend William Burroughs, was accused of witchcraft in 1692 and was hanged in Salem. Also, after the death of his father when he was only 2 years old, his mother, Mary Thomas, married John Gibbs of Christ Church in Boston, whose former wife was the daughter of Reverend Timothy Cutler, the first rector of the church. Rector being kind of the chief administrator. His brother, Robert Newman's brother, was the organist in the Old North Church, and his cousin Isaiah Thomas was a Boston printer. So basically the point is setting up that they are embedded in Boston's history, and especially with the Old North Church. That'll become relevant later on. He became a sexton of Christ Church in 1772. Sexton being a person who kind of does some caretaking of the upkeep, the maintenance of the church. Now, in the spring of 1775, during the Revolutionary period, Newman lived at home with his mother in a house on the corner of Sheaf Street and Salem Street. Now, she rented part of her home to British officers during the occupation of Boston, as it was common for many families. But on the night of April 18th, 1775, Newman pretended to go to sleep, but instead snuck out the back of his house and met up in the Old North Church along with Captain John Pulling and Thomas Bernard. Now, by the request of one brother, Paul Revere, Newman and Pulling were to carry signal lanterns to the top of the Old North Church steeple and place them in windows where Bernard stood outside as a lookout. The signal lanterns sent an incredibly important message across the river. I'm sure by now you figured out where we're talking about the 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. This is the brother who helped Paul Revere set the signal that assisted in the counter-revolution, or the revolution for the British British troops. Paul Revere had told Colonel Compton and some friends in Charleston to keep an eye on that steeple of that church and to wait for a signal. They were told that if they saw one signal light, the British troops were leaving Boston by land via the Boston Neck. And if they saw 2 lights, the troops planned on rowing across the Charles River to Cambridge before marching to the countryside. Their orders were to seize and destroy munitions that the colonists had been illegally stockpiling in Concord. After receiving the signal for which route the British soldiers were taking, riders would then alarm the rest of the countryside. Legend has it that after assisting with the signal lanterns, Newman escaped from the church by climbing out a back window on the ground floor of the church and sneaking back into his house and pretending to go back to sleep. So the next day, the British troops arrested him and placed him in jail. Why? Because he was only one of the few people in town with a set of keys to the Old North Church. He was later released after he told them that he had lent Captain Pulling the church keys, and when they went looking for Pulling had been long gone, fled Boston by that time. So in another little side story that goes along with this, in 1782, he sold a lantern to one Captain Daniel Brown for an undisclosed amount of money, claiming it was the sole remaining lantern of the original 2 that were displayed in 1775. Fast forward quite a bit time later, in 1853, a descendant of Captain Brown sold it to Mr. Cummings Davis of Concord, and in 1886, even later, Mr. Davis donated it to the Concord Historical Society. That lantern is still on display to visitors in the Concord Museum, although they really can't prove the integrity of the chain of custody, and so we're really not sure it's 100% the lantern, but it makes a good story. So after the events of 1775, Newman continued serving as a sexton of the Old North Church until his death on May 26, 1804. Tragically, Newman committed suicide. He was buried in Copp's Hill Burying Ground in Boston, which we'll talk about in a minute. Which is interesting about the suicide thing, because now we're fast forwarding a great period of time later. We're at 1804 and in 1775, so he was in his early 50s, and there's speculation is that he may have been carrying a lot of the weight of the revolution and his act of rebellion on him, which may have led to his suicide. Masonically, he was, just the quick amount of research I could find, he was the Grand Tyler for the Grand Lodge in Massachusetts at one point in time. And I wanted to show a picture that we recently took while we were up in Boston during Masonicon this year. So let me switch over, share my screen to show you his actual tombstone. Here rests Robert Newman, born in Boston, March 20th, 1752, died in Boston, May 26th, 1804, with the huge square and compasses, a patriot who, having the signal lanterns in the church tower, April 18th, 1775. So he was, definitely called out for his contribution to.
Did you say who hung signal lanterns or having signal lanterns?
I read it very quickly. It is hung with a Roman V. So
okay.
Yeah. Hung the signal lanterns. Thank you, Jason, for calling out my grammatical errors on the air.
It's not grammatical errors. You can't read.
I hate you so much. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Interesting guy, and I think he's really kind of one of the unsung heroes of the revolution, because they don't go into much detail about him. It's all about Paul Revere. Juan, you're showing us a picture of the supposed Paul Revere lantern, right? There it goes.
Yes, sir. There it tastes.
There it is. And it's a gift of Cummings Davis. So there we go. That is the one that we read about. There's my guy. Who's next? Let's go to Robert.
Well, all right.
All right.
So I was thinking about this a little bit, just like Mike, didn't know who to essentially go after, as it were. I reached out to Todd Creason, who wrote a book called Famous American Freemasons, right? 2 volumes. And I said, hey, if you could say who was underappreciated as a Mason, an American Freemason, for contributions of whatever, who would it be? And so he gave me this guy, and I started reading it, and I was like,
And his name is
"Holy-"
Todd Creason.
Yeah, it's Todd Creason. It's kind of like the book there's a book about Nikola Tesla's inventions called the Amazing Inventions of Nikola Tesla, and it's by Nikola Tesla.
Yes.
So this guy, born December 14th, 1896. It's James H. Doolittle, known as Jimmy Doolittle. So this guy grows up in Alaska, in Nome. He goes to California. He goes to school, and he actually wins a college scholarship at Berkeley. He ends up leaving college for a little while to be in World War I. He becomes a Signal Corps, part of the Signal Corps Reserve. Later on, he becomes a cadet with Air Force. I'm sorry, not Air Force. He becomes a cadet, and then he's in the Army as a lieutenant. Then he really becomes, sorry, so many fireworks going on tonight. So if you hear that, sorry. So because right after World War I, he becomes very famous as a pilot. He does tons of pioneering flights. He does all kinds of test flights. He assists in the invention of aeronautical instrumentation. And he actually flew the first instrument-only flight ever. So he flew and he took off using only instrument flight, so no windows in the plane. So he took off and landed it without looking outside. Pretty amazing stuff. Again, huge, amazing test pilot. Then what's kind of nuts, what he's really known for is December 7th, 1941, we have Pearl Harbor. America loses 2,400 men in Pearl Harbor. Doolittle he decides to do something. He proposes this idea. So America wants to strike Japan, but there's no way we can fly over there on a tank of gas and then get home. So they say, well, maybe what we can do is we can fly over there, bomb them, and then land in allied countries like China and Russia. So they decide this is just crazy enough to work. Doolittle works out a plan. They basically strip down some B-25s to bare minimums. They put these 500-pound bombs on these B-25s. Then they pack these things on some carriers, and the carriers start to make their way toward Japan. They leave out of California. They get almost there. They're like 130 miles, 140 miles out, and they're spotted by a Japanese patrol boat. They destroy the carriers destroy the boat, and Doolittle makes the call. He says, "Let's launch now." And these guys are like, "Are you crazy? We're not going to make it back. We're not going to have enough fuel." And he says, "We got to go just in case they radioed it." So they take off, and they reach Japan like noon after a 6-hour. Jesus, I don't know if you can hear these fireworks. There's a 6-hour flight. Okay, great. I'm glad. Happy 4th. So these guys take off from the craft carriers, and they bomb several targets in Japan. There were 16 of these B-25s. They bomb Japan, and they barely get out. A few of them get taken out. In fact, all 16 of the B-25s were not recovered. There were survivors. Doolittle actually thinks that when he goes home, he's going to be court-martialed because of his decision to just go for it. He viewed the mission as a failure. But when he gets home, he gets a Medal of Honor, and they think it's a huge success because it boosts the morale of the American public and the American war machine. And it's really crazy. They have I'm sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here. So, this was pretty fantastic. So Japan feels like America's got some kind of crazy secret now, because they either have a new engine that can go super far on a tank of gas, or they have some secret bases in China or wherever, neither of which were really true. The the secret was, of course, nobody thought that you could take a B-25 off from an aircraft carrier. They just thought they'd be too heavy. But of course, they did retrofit these things to make that happen. But so they do this whole thing, and later on they ask the president, "Where did you make these planes take off from?" And the president says, "Shangri-La." And it was kind of a joke, right? Well, later on they actually commission a aircraft carrier called the Shangri-La. It's kind of an homage to that. So Doolittle is really responsible for this whole thing. He was an amazing push in trying to retaliate against the 2,400 that were lost at Pearl Harbor, but also as a huge push to boost the feeling and to make it well known that America is going to get in this war and we're going to win this war. So he, in 1985, he actually receives a full general in the Air Force as a status retired. He dies in 1993. He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery. An interesting story about that was at his funeral, one of his surviving people from Doolittle's Raiders, as they were called, tried to play taps, and he couldn't do it. So the guy hands the horn over to the son, and the son plays it flawlessly, while the only remaining B-25s in the American military flew overhead. And pretty crazy. But one of the neatest things about this is this kind of really neat legend, and it's not really a legend per se. I mean, it's factual. The survivors of the Doolittle's Raiders actually meet up every year, and they have like a ceremony and a toast. And I'm not sure how many are left today, but I think it was as far back as 2007. There were still 8 members still alive. And the plan is actually, when there's only 2 members of the Raiders left, they have a special bottle that's at the Air Force Museum of Hennessy cognac that's from 1896 that has been preserved for these guys, and they'll take their final drinks out of that, and that's it. But so this Doolittle was a member of Hollenbeck Lodge number 319 in Los Angeles, California. So he was a resident of California, but then he got stationed in Louisiana. And because he was there, we have jurisdictional issues, right? So he becomes a Mason in Louisiana, but is a California Mason. So he becomes a member. He's made a Master Mason by Lake Charles Lodge number 16 in Louisiana. And because of the special dispensation required, he actually was a member of Hollenbeck 319 in LA. And he's also a 32nd degree in the Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction, and a Shriner. That's it. So I hope you enjoyed me telling you about Jimmy Doolittle with the patriotic fireworks in the background.
It brought a lot of this war sound effects.
Yeah. So you're welcome for that. It's like anti-aircraft gunning and
playing it just right.
It's like you're playing Call of Duty.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something controversial, though. Call of Duty was not as good as the other game that I can't remember the name of.
Battlefield?
Wolfenstein?
Battlefront.
Battlefield, yeah. I like Battlefield better.
All right. Well, looks like we're at the end of our time. Sorry, Jason, you don't get to go tonight.
That's okay. I'm doing an entire episode next week.
No, that's true. No, go ahead.
Just for grins. So tonight I am going to talk about a brother by the name of Brother Haym Salomon, who was one of the financiers of the American Revolution and a Master Mason. He was born in Lissa, Poland in 1740. He was of Portuguese lineage, but left he was a member of King Solomon Lodge number 12 in Pennsylvania. And once he got to the United States, he got thrown into the the midst of the Revolutionary War, and Salomon joined the American cause. The American cause, which was a decision really that ultimately led to his financial destruction. He was arrested and imprisoned as a spy soon after the occupation by the British of New York in 1776, and he was closely confined for a long period of time in that prison in New York. So he eventually was able to escape, and after the British pardoned him, but required him to spend 18 months on a British boat as an interpreter for Hessian soldiers. So he actually used his position on the British boat to help prisoners of the British escape and encouraged the Hessians, since he was the interpreter, to desert the war effort. In 1778, he was arrested again and taken by British General Sir Henry Clinton on charges that he had received orders from General Washington to burn fleets and destroy warehouses, which he had attempted to do. He was put back in prison, tortured, and condemned to hang. But in August, he bribed his jailer and escaped to Philadelphia. 2 weeks later, he petitioned the Continental Congress to permit him to work for the cause. And the Congress did not accept his offer, but it turned out the rejection actually worked well, because he resettled and resumed his activities as a broker. And in doing so, from the period of 1781 to 1784, Salomon raised a whole bunch of funds and did a whole bunch of lending to provide over $650,000, which would have been almost $17 million today, in financing directly to George Washington for the war effort. His most meaningful contribution, however, came at the Battle of Yorktown, which we know as being the final battle of the Revolutionary War. In August 1781, the Continental Army, of course, had trapped Cornwallis in Yorktown, and George Washington and his main army were coming into Yorktown to deliver kind of the final blow to the British forces. But Washington was broke, and the Continental didn't have any money whatsoever. So Washington determined that he needed at least $20,000, of course, of 1781 money, to finance the campaign to Yorktown. And Rob Morris, who was Washington's either financier, said there were no funds and no credit available. So Washington said, okay, send for Haym Salomon. And Salomon raised $20,000 through the sale of bills of exchange. And with that, and then $1,400,000 loaned personally by the other financier, Rob Morris, Washington conducted the Yorktown campaign, successfully ending the American Revolution. So it's, interestingly enough, brother Salomon, did all of this great work for the country, and he's someone up until this week I had never heard of, and he died in actually relative obscurity. He died 1785 at the age of 45, and he was actually bankrupt and left his wife and children penniless. He was eventually recognized posthumously with a U.S. commemorative stamp, hailing him as a financial hero. And there's actually a statue of him and Robert Morris, denoted as the financiers of the Revolution with George Washington. So that is the story of a Mason you probably haven't heard of before. And we wouldn't have been able to win the Revolutionary War without him.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Okay, let's start wrapping it up. We'll start with Robert. Final thoughts, shameless plugs. Go.
Final thoughts. If you want to know about some more additional dudes who are pretty rad in Masonry, I'm going to plug Todd's book, Famous American Freemasons, Volume 1 and 2. It's a big book, and it's really cool the way it's written. It's actually not in terms of like chapters, where it's not like, hey, here's a chapter on Jimmy Doolittle. Here's a title, and you read it, and you're like, oh, this guy's name is Jimmy Doolittle. So it's really cool the way it reads. I've actually read some stories from this to my kids bedtime because there's some really impactful, neat stories that are in here. So pretty cool. That aside, thanks to everybody out there who is picking up John and I's book that we did called It's Business Time. And really appreciate all that. I just went ahead, we redid the website on Whence Came You's website, so wcypodcast.com. Now looks a little bit different. It's a little more clean. I hope you guys like it. We changed the logo up a little bit. And we retired the WCY lapel pin. That particular pin is going away. We sold the last one last week, and I don't have any more. And I'm not making that pin again. But I might make a new pin, which is going to be pretty sweet. So stay tuned for details on that. We'll release some information on that as it develops.
It's in work.
It's in the works. I'm having Jason take a look at it, and his amazing bride is quite the accomplished graphic artist and helps out with that kind of stuff. So super huge thanks.
So she and I designed all the TMR pins and the first edition of the Whence Came You pin.
That's a true story. It's pretty it's badass, actually. Masonic power couple. So thanks to everybody out there who picked up those pins. I really appreciate it. Whence Came You is a podcast, 9:30 Sunday nights, new episode every single week. And the last episode, we talked to the dudes behind Amity, which I thought was so amazing that I went ahead and retired my stupid Excel thing because it's just dumb in comparison. So go check out Amity. It's a really amazing app. And you want to hear more about it? Check out that last episode, 351. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert. Mike the intern. Final thoughts.
So this was really great. I had a little piece to bump onto yours, RJ, about Jimmy Doolittle. When those Raiders were preparing for that flight, they never took off from a carrier at all before that. They actually measured out strips of land that were 800 feet and learned how to rev their engines up fast enough before they started even rolling down the runway. And then, and actually, so taking off from land is totally different from taking off from a carrier. So these guys were really lucky in the end that it worked.
Right. Yeah.
So,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep. But anyway, the rest of everybody was great. I really enjoyed them. Jimmy Doolittle, I just happen to know a lot about from my history studies. So
Stuff.
All right.
Yeah. If you go back and watch Masonic Jeopardy, Mike the intern came out of nowhere and just crushed everyone in Masonic history. Cool stuff. Juan, what say you? Final thoughts, shameless plugs. Go.
So many cool stories, right? Different from what we hear all the time about some of the very staple names in American Masonry. And all of these are very rich stories that have lessons intertwined in them, and it's exciting to hear about it. So I did enjoy hearing your selections, and I enjoyed thoroughly learning a little bit more about my selection. And it's just it's a very worthy exercise, and I encourage brothers to also look around the walls in your lodge. There are pictures there of brothers that played a role in the history of your lodge, in the history of your district, of your the Masonic experience you enjoyed today. Try to find out a little bit more about them. See if anybody has taken the time to write stories about them, record their voices or video. It will be very interesting for you. I think edifying is something that will connect you deeper with your lodge. So the exercise we did today, I encourage you brothers to do on your own, about your own unsung heroes in Masonry in your respective lodges and areas. So it was a very enjoyable episode as always. Thank you, brothers, for your hard work and everything. And my shameless pug is encouraging brothers to go check out the latest episode of The Winding Stairs. It took me a while to publish that. Things are moving at a more acceptable pace now. I'm excited about the things that are coming in the channel. And if you're not subscribed on YouTube, I encourage you to do so, because I have a couple things planned for there. So thewindingstairs.com. Thank you, brothers.
All right. Let's see. Thank you, Juan. Here is your shameless pug. There you go. All right. Jason Richards.
All right. Great show. Full of really fun stories. And I think we all learned something new tonight, which is awesome. It wasn't the same regurgitated tale about Benjamin Franklin, Paul Revere, and or George Washington. So it's nice to have something. It's nice to have something new every now and then. So want to give a special shout out to the brethren of Lebanon Lodge down in Lebanon, Ohio. I was able to come out and speak at their More Light Night this past Saturday. They set me up in like the most amazing hotel room I've ever been in on Masonic business. So it was kind of awesome. I didn't see any ghosts. So that was good. Wasn't haunted. But I had a great time with all those guys. And you know what, this is the first time that I've had folks pay close enough attention to the research that I'm presenting to ask questions about weak parts of my research. So I actually got called out a little bit on some of the pieces of my argument that I need to truss up with some more research. So that was really cool. It just showed that I was speaking to a really smart group of folks, and a really good group of folks who are really interested in what we had to say. So that was really, really cool, and it was a really fun time. So I appreciate all the work that Brother Ryan Hall and company did in setting up that event. So that was awesome. Next week's going to be fun. We are starting a new series, right, John?
That's correct. I am happy to announce that we're going to do another multi-part series. Those previous ones have been a hit. So we decided to start over the next 5 weeks to do the history of our respective Grand Lodges, starting with Jason Richards next week and a mystery guest to talk about the history of the Grand Lodge of DC.
Yep, it'll be a lot of fun. So it's gonna be it's gonna be really neat. I love DC Masonry. It's a lot of fun. It's very diverse, and it's in the middle of the nation's capital. So I think we're gonna have a really good discussion next week. I'm bringing on a special guest from who is also a member of the Grand Lodge of DC to help me go through it, provided his microphone is working by then. So it'll be a good time. And so stay tuned. It'll be awesome, and looking forward to it. Back to you, John.
Alrighty. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, good show. A lot of good research. I love the history ones, especially when you get these bite-sized chunks of things you can take back to your lodge, do a little bit more research. I'm usually not a fan of the whole Freemasons thing. I'd rather figure out what part of Freemasonry made them, do good things. So, but this one was good mix of brothers from across the American time frame. So good job, good show, and we'll see you next week. Thanks very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.